One of my favorite aunts when I was growing up was a housekeeper for a man by the name of Tony Sharmley, who was an Emmy-winning, very famous choreographer turned director. He was the choreographer on the Danny Kaye show, the old Dinosaur Network show, a lot of specials and things like that. So I grew up, he was like a member of our family. And my brother and my two cousins and I would spend summers with my aunt. Often we would arrive at the house, get out of my aunt's car, get in the car with him and go to wherever he was working at CBS or at NBC or one of the other studios. And so I spent time around there, and I thought, well, this is pretty cool. This is something that I'd like to, when I grow up, this is what I want to do. And so that's where I really kind of got bitten by the bug. Nobody else was bitten by the bug, but I was big time, and it never went away.
How did you get your start in the industry? You went to college and studied communications, I think?
Communication studies. I started as a page at what was then called Golden West Broadcasters, part of KTLA in Los Angeles. They had studios there. We did game shows and talk shows and sitcoms. And so I spent my college years ushering people in to see Solid Gold or the Mike Douglas Show or WKRP in Cincinnati, What's Happening. The list goes on and on and on. And that's how I got my start.
Being a page, is that how you got your next job?
Most people don't get page positions until they're juniors or seniors. It was basically like an internship is today. And I was fortunate because I was a freshman. And I actually knew someone who got me into the program early. And so by the time I was out of school, I had developed a lot of relationships and met a lot of people who had, for whatever reason, were impressed on some level. So, I mean, at first I was in charge of the page group that I had been a member of for all of those years. I went from doing that to becoming an assistant unit manager, making sure that the clients have a good experience there, dealing with their crew issues and their studio issues and its scheduling and things of that nature. Started to learn the ropes that way. And then after about a year after I graduated from college, I moved across the street to what was then Metro Media Square. I think all of the family had moved there. Three's Company was shot there. Give Me a Break. Star Search was shooting there, incidentally directed by Tony Sharmley, my aunt's boss, and eventually became a unit manager. And then I was hired to be executive in charge of production on a syndicated show called Our Magazine, hosted by Gary Collins, produced by Group W Productions. And I was executive in charge of production there. I think I was 25 or 26, which was pretty young to be doing that. Our Magazine had started at KTLA, which was across the street where I worked before. And then it later moved to Metro Media. And Marty Berman, who was the executive producer, said, there's a kid who used to work across the street who was a page. And can you get him to be like a page on our show? He was talking about me. And they said to him, that kid, yes, he does work here, but he's going to be the unit manager on your show. So I was reunited with Marty and my other friends from Our Magazine and Group W, and I became executive in charge of production there. And I did that for about 2.5 years. And then Marty Berman, who's from New York and was an old friend of Geraldo Rivera's, decided that he was going to move back to New York to become executive producer on the Geraldo show. And he said to me, there's nothing here. There's no structure. There's no system. There's nothing. You need to come and join me in New York. And I said, not really. Well, I'm from California. I have a new car. I got a girlfriend. I like my life here. I don't really want to leave. And plus, I don't think I'd like New York. I think I'd hate it. And he goes, I understand that, but you need to listen to me. This will be good for you. You need to listen to me here and not be a schmuck. Those were his exact words. And you need to do this. If you don't like it, you can come back. I said, okay, I'll come for 6 months. I'll do a contract for 6 months because I know I'm not going to like it. I'm going to want to come home. I had just turned 28 when I went there, and I was there 6 years. And we had a great run together, a great experience there. And that sort of put me onto a different track because now I had this small production company to run with a giant talent, with a hit daytime syndicated show. And I was there until I moved back to California. I took a job with Genesis Entertainment. It wasn't one of the top tier companies, but they were giving me an opportunity to head program development and production, which I thought was cool because I had production. I thought down cold. I mean, I knew how to do that, but I always wanted to be in the programming game on the creative side of things. They were producing a talk show with Whoopi Goldberg. It was a late night talk show, one-on-one interview with her and a guest. And so I thought, so that was great because I got to meet her and she was cool. I mean, really, I liked her a lot. And we got to the point where we put the Whoopi show on the air and it wasn't really performing that well. What I had done was didn't pan out to be everything that I had wanted it to be. And at the same time, Geraldo was relentless in haranguing me for having left and telling me, the places are the same. You left me high and dry. You stabbed me in the back. You need to come back here and help us, right this ship. That combined with the fact that my now wife, then fiance, wasn't loving it in LA, made me go, all right, well, I'm not getting everything that I want here. She's not happy. May as well go back. So I was out here 6 months and then went back to New York. And by then we were also doing Now It Can Be Told, but that was fading. So there was a lot to do, shut that down and kind of clean up everything that hadn't really been dealt with while I had been away. So I went back and we were there for 6 months. Well, we were there for about 2 months and I got a call from Jim Paratori, who ran Telepictures, part of the Warner Brothers group of companies, who I had known and had been talking to for some time. And he said, yeah, I know you just moved back to New York, but now I'm ready to make a change with my head of production. And I want that to be you. And I want you, so you're ready to come back to LA. I was like, well, I just got back here. He goes, look, what can I tell you? I have the job now. Do you want it or do you not? Because if you want it, it's yours. And so I had to go to Geraldo and go, you know what, that coming back thing and all that, I just got a call from Warner Brothers and it's a job that I kind of have always wanted. So I'm going to have to go back to LA again. And he was furious, but he understood. And that's when I came to Warner Brothers, and I've been here ever since.
What was it like for you to be in your 20s and being the executive and like talking to people and telling people what to do? And I'm sure people you were working with were older than you and more experienced. I mean, what was that like?
Yeah, well, I was always the youngest everything. As I told you a little earlier, when I started as a page, most people were 3 or 4 years older than me. So I was the youngest page. I became an assistant unit manager. I was the youngest assistant unit manager. I became a unit manager. I was the youngest unit manager. So I was always the young guy. And to the people at Our Magazine, I was the kid, someone that they had literally watched grow up. And so there was a transition there with some of the people there who were used to seeing me as one of the kids wearing the blue polyester suits to now being the person who signed the paychecks. I never really gave that much thought to the age that I was. I'm doing something that I love, and this is cool. And I'm working on a studio lot every day. And I was a typical sort of arrogant, young executive who just really, I thought I knew everything, and there was so much that I didn't know. And the one thing I'll say about working with Marty, in particular in that situation, I used to have this habit of saying, oh, I know all about that. I invented that. And one day Marty said to me, do me a favor. Don't ever say to me or in front of me again that you invented something, because you didn't. Okay. You might have thought of it, but you weren't the first one. You might have executed it, but you weren't the first one, and someone else probably did it better. So just don't get ahead of yourself. I will admit that when I was young, I just, because I was so driven, so eager to just to have a voice and to climb the ladder, that there's a cockiness that I think a lot of young people suffer from, and I was no exception on that. And plus, I looked around. There weren't a lot of people who looked like me. And so there was that. I mean, it wasn't a chip that I wore on my shoulder, but it was something that was not missed by me. You might see them on TV. They might be a performer sometimes. You might see other people of my background. Um, you might see someone on the crew, not enough service jobs. But as executives, there were very, very few that I came across, and there's still too few today. But yeah, that was something that I was aware of, but it wasn't what drove me. I was just because I'm a kid from the suburbs of LA, and I'm like everybody else, and that's what my parents taught me. No better than anyone else, and no one else is any better than me. My ethnic makeup and the fact that there weren't a lot of people um, in high positions who looked like me was something that I noticed, but I didn't dwell on. I just was, just moving ahead like any of my peers would have tried to do.
I think people might be surprised to realize how much time and effort, everything that goes into getting something off the ground.
Well, Extra is a great example. When we decided we were going to do Extra, that was going to be a competitor to ET. That was something we built from the ground up. I mean, it's still in the air today. And I was there from the very beginning of it. We created a studio and an office operation in an old warehouse, and put together field crews and editing bays and a newsroom. It was really quite impressive. I remember when we had looked for months for the right spot to do this show. We had looked at independent film lots and different office spaces and warehouses and things like that. And we were starting to get discouraged that we would find anything that worked. And I remember one day, after many months of looking, it was like a Friday afternoon, and it was raining and it was late. And the guy who was with me just wanted to like get home. And this was our last stop, and so we went into the place, and the roof was leaking. It was freezing cold. They were storing like earth moving equipment, in part of it. The floor was torn up, and it was really kind of awful. And he's he's got an overcoat on it because it was raining, and he pulls his collar up, and he looks around, and he's like, "Let's get the heck out of here." And I said, "No, no, 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 no. You don't understand. We found it. This is it. This is what we've been looking for all this time. This is it." And sure enough, we built that out and made it work. And it worked for 25 years. The company sold it a couple of years ago and downsized the footprint of that show. But it worked for 25 years. So that's something that I was really proud of. The Rosie Show and being on the road and spent a lot of time in Florida. We'd go to Disney one year, Universal the next year, and move the whole staff, lock, stock, and barrel there, and get everyone housed and get everyone set up with electronics and all. And that was my responsibility, along with the executive in charge on the show. And we would create an environment, a production environment where nothing existed. Not unlike the days on the Geraldo show. You go into a shopping mall. That one day is just a shopping mall, and people are, you're out doing their Christmas shopping. 2 days later, we're in there with a stage and lights and cameras and celebrities and the whole thing. And we do our show, and it generates all this excitement. And you do 2 or 3 or 4 shows, and then 3 days later, you're striking out, and people are going about their business again. We did a show at a nudist colony, more than one show at prisons. We did a show at a brothel in Nevada on a moving subway train. I always loved doing those things because they were out of the ordinary, and there was always some doubt in someone's mind somewhere that we would be able to pull it off. And so I always took great pride on being able to say, "Look, we did it."
On Donahue, we went to one of those brothels as well.
Yeah.
Chicken Ranch, I think it was called.
We were at the Mustang Ranch.
The Mustang Ranch, yes,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah, the Mustang Ranch. That was one. That was a hard one to have to, because I would always call my parents whenever because we didn't have cell phones. So whenever I landed in a new spot in a new location, I would call my parents just to say hello and check in on everyone. And having to explain to my mother where I was, and I went there so often as because I was the advanced person. I was the person who had to scout the place and meet the technical people there, meet the lighting people there. So I was back and forth all the time. they had a nickname for me. I was like their mascot or something for a while.
Oh my God, that's so funny. So, in all of these 4 decades, what would you say would be your proudest moment or proudest job?
I'll tell you, the first day that we put the Rosie O'Donnell show on the air, we were live to several markets back then. We were doing it at 30 Rock in 8G, which I know you have some familiarity with. We had all worked really hard to bring that about. I can remember nights being in the office there. I moved from LA back to New York and was living in a hotel and eventually got an apartment there because that's how we did it at Telepictures those days. All hands on deck. And I can remember many nights being in this little office in what had been the Donahue offices on the 8th floor. With a really tiny office, you could hardly even turn around in it. There were 2 desks in there, both facing opposite walls. And you'd look up at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and everyone else was gone. There was one light burning, and it was in that office. Jim Paratori sitting on one wall, me sitting on the other, back to back, not even really realizing the other was there, just doing our work. That's the kind of work that we put into getting that show on the air. So that first day in the control room, once we went up, and I saw the picture, and there's a delay on this. And so I was panicked for a second because it was black for a second. When I saw that confidence return that first day, there was a mixture of like just joy and pride, and it's kind of emotional today because I just remember that moment so vividly. So that is, when I think about it, I think that's probably my proudest moment.
Are you involved with The Bachelor?
Oh sure. Yeah. I'll tell you a great story about The Bachelor. We had the first pitch of The Bachelor. This was when my first stint at Telepictures. It was like 2001. And Mike Fleiss and his agent at the time, Michael Camacho, and some other people came in to pitch the show. And I was in the room, and Paratori was in the room. I think my friend Alan Sachs, who was head of business affairs, was there. Hillary Estey, maybe David Auerbach, several people. And so we're all in the room. We hear the pitch. And they tell us what it's going to be, and this guy's going to date 25 women, and now he's going to merge with one, and maybe they'll get married. And so we hear the whole thing, and as happens in those pitches and things like that, there's a lot of, oh, this is great, this is awesome. And then sometimes when people leave the room, when the people presenting leave the room, everybody looks at each other and is like, what? Can you believe these bozos bringing us this? And so in that situation, everyone was gushing about that. Oh, this is the greatest thing. Now, this was 2001. This is the greatest thing. This is going to be amazing. And I looked at Paratori and I said, Jim, let me tell you something. I'm just going to tell you this straight out. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. It's going to run 2 cycles and we're going to lose money on it. I'm just going on the record right now. So I tell that story because it speaks to my creative chops or lack thereof. But it's just so funny because here we are 20 years later, and I'm still involved, but I had a little bit of a hiatus for a while when I was off doing my studio executive thing, but still thriving and still going strong. And it's one of our most important properties.
What about it made you think that it was a dumb idea?
Who's going to want to watch people go on a date, and who in their right mind would be one of those 25 women competing for a man? What guy is going to think he's so special that he's worthy of that? Well, of course, there's a lot of guys who think they're worthy of that. But it just seemed kind of far-fetched to me.
Yeah.
But if I'd been in the room when they were talking about Survivor and putting people on a desert island, I probably would have said the same thing and been just as wrong.
Tell me about what your job is.
There are multiple television units within the Warner company that produce unscripted television. One of them is Telepictures, where I originally came into the company in 1993. Their mission has always been first run syndicated programming. We did the Jenny Jones show. We did a talk show with Jane Whitney. We put Extra on the air. We have still Judge Mathis. We distribute People's Court. We created the Rosie O'Donnell show and put that on the air. The Ellen show, which is in its final season. So anything for first run syndication, that's what Telepictures does. And then we also have Shed Media, basic cable supplier, supplying the likes of Bravo and E, and then we have Horizon Alternative. It's the unscripted side of Warner Horizon Television, which produces The Bachelor, Ellen's Game of Games. We do documentaries and other things like that. So it's all of those non-scripted units of Warner Brothers being brought under a common umbrella at a high level, because I don't work for any of those companies. I work for the parent, Warner Media company, and then there are people at lower levels below me who actually head those production and administrative and financial operations. So that's my job. That's my job now.
Have you ever made a bold move in your career that's either worked out well or not worked out well?
After having been at Telepictures for 12 years, I had moved over to the studio as head of studio operations for the Warner Brothers lots, the main lot and the ranch lot. It was kind of a different track, better hours. I had young kids at the time. I was enjoying doing that, and I loved the people that I was working with. And I got a call from my friend Bruce Rosenblum, who was head of all of television for Warner Brothers at the time, saying that we're starting this new division. We want you to be head of production for it. And it was scripted, single camera and sitcom. And I had spent, a fair amount of time around sitcoms in my career, but very little on single camera dramas. There's no particular science to it. I mean, there are things you have to know, but anyone who knows production can pick those things up. But to be head of production in that setting was one that I thought, well, you're biting off more than you can chew, because it's a different, you're using different muscles, different skills for that versus where I had spent most of my career. And but they were convinced that I was the right person to do it. And they came on strong, and I was pushing back, saying I didn't really want to do it. And finally, one day, Bruce, who'd been my friend for since I was in college, said to me, "You're making this hard, and you realize that I don't have to ask you to do anything. I could just tell you what you're doing next." And I said, well, yeah, I guess when you put it that way, then we all know where this is going to land. There was a lot to bite off, and it worked out. I mean, I'm very pleased and very proud of the track record that we established and the things that we put on the air. Pretty Little Liars was an enormous hit for us. Rizzoli and Isles and project after project. Warner Horizon was, again, something that we built from nothing. There were four of us and our assistants at the beginning, and we ended up when it was realigned and disbanded, about a little over a year ago. We had probably 60 people working in that division. So that was a leap, but it was one that worked out.
What is it about you that allows you to be able to make it successful and not get your ego in the way because someone else has a strong personality? Do you know what I mean?
Because I don't really have an ego about things. I mean, I know I have a very strong belief and sense of what I think is right and what's needed in a given situation. I think I have some credibility on that because I have been around a long time and I do have results to show for that. But for me, it's not about winning. It's not about winning a battle or an argument. I tell the people who I work with and who work for me now, there are multiple times in every day that I know I'm right about things, but I also know that I'm going to lose the argument. But sometimes you just have to have the argument anyway, because that's what your responsibility is, knowing that you're going to lose it. I don't take it personally. I might vent to a friend or to a colleague about how I think this one's crazy or that one's crazy, but it doesn't keep me up at night. I I care what happens to me because I want to continue to do this job, and I want to continue to be in the position that I'm in. But if they stopped it tomorrow, I would be able to say, this was a great run. I used to say to my friend and former boss, Brett Paul, when I was doing scripted work for Warner Horizon. Um, I used to say to him, BP, I'm your I'm your dream. I'm the best employee you have here. You know why? Because I'm not running for reelection. I don't care what happens to me. I'm only going to tell you the truth because I don't. I want you to be happy, but it doesn't matter to me if you don't like what I'm saying to you because I'm just telling you what's true. And that's kind of how I look at things now. When I was younger and I had young kids and 25 more years of work ahead of me, I played the game of wanting to walk that tightrope to keep people happy. So that liberation of not worrying about what people think of you. I mean, I want everyone to like me and to have had a good experience with me, but I don't obsess over it, and I'm going to do the right thing, even if that means that people don't like me. I'm still going to do the right thing.